A heated exchange there in the Oval Office just about an hour ago between President Volodymyr Zelensky, President Trump, and Vice President J.D. Vance. That meeting not going to plan. They were there to hopefully sign a rare earth minerals deal. That deal has not been signed. And not too long after that explosive meeting there in the Oval Office, Volodymyr Zelensky left the White House altogether. I want to bring in Nancy Cordes, who is live at the White House, who watched this whole thing unfold. Nancy, I want to read you a tweet by Senator Chuck Schumer. He said Trump and Vance are doing Putin's dirty work. Senate Democrats will never stop fighting for freedom and democracy. A lot of reaction coming out of Capitol Hill today to this explosive meeting. What else are you hearing?
A lot of frustration on the part of congressional Democrats. A lot of chest thumping here at the White House from various White House aides who say that this was President Trump and Vice President Vance standing up for America. And, you know, it's Friday night in Europe, so we haven't heard that much from across the pond, but one has to imagine that this is going to be crushing to a lot of European leaders who were hoping that the fact that this minerals deal was about to be signed was an indication that perhaps there was a thawing taking place in the relationship between President Trump and President Zelensky. Now things have clearly gone south, as far south as they possibly could have, with Zelensky essentially being shown the door here at the White House.
Nancy, real quick before we go to break, any idea where Zelensky is now? Is he going to the airport?
He's slated to do an interview with Fox today. He's slated to give a speech, so we're watching to see if those things continue to take place so he can at least get his side out before he heads back to Ukraine.
Right now to speak with a member of the Trump administration. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is standing by, and I'll hand things off to Bloomberg's David Weston, who will do the interview. David?
For our Bloomberg audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. I'm delighted to welcome now the U.S. Treasury Secretary. He's Mr. Scott Bessent. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us. Ukraine is at the top of everyone's mind right now, and particularly the deal that you were the point person on as you went over to Kyiv to actually first present it. We all watched what happened in the Oval Office. I guess the simple question is, can this deal be saved?
Well, David, the question is which deal, the peace deal or the economic deal? Because clearly it's very difficult to do an economic deal with a leader who doesn't want to do a peace deal. And I will tell you, I was sitting 3 away from President Trump or President Zelensky, and this has to be one of the great diplomatic own goals in history.
If Mr. Zelensky called back right now and said, I'm sorry, I want to put it back together, what would he have to do?
I don't know. Mr. Zelensky and his team were taken out of the Oval, and they kept coming back with that message, and then they left the White House, and it's going to take a lot of repair. And, you know, David, the real tragedy here, maybe things can be repaired with the administration, but I don't know how the American people are going to feel. And more importantly, the economic deal, the meeting today, the real purpose was to show that there was no daylight between the Americans and the Ukrainians. So, you know, President Trump's idea was to show that with the economic deals, to show that we're more intertwined, and that would be a symbol to the Ukrainian people, to Russian leadership, and to the American people. And President Zelensky blew that up today. I'm not sure what he was thinking.
As I say, you were the point person, really, for the administration on the economic deal. We all thought on the outside we were very close. In fact, I think many of us thought there'd be a signing today, that we'd have some form of economic deal today. Were we as close as those of us on the outside thought? Were you surprised?
Again, I was shocked that President Zelensky would come into the Oval Office, behave like this, speak to the president, speak to the vice president, but more importantly, disrespect the American people like this. I know he's under a great deal of stress. He and I had a very heated exchange in Kyiv. I think the same thing may have happened between him and Vice President Vance and Secretary Rubio in Munich. And, you know, to come in and behave like this was unacceptable. And look, I mean, what better runway did he have? that President of France, Emmanuel Macron, in the Oval on Monday. Yesterday, we had a fantastic meeting with Prime Minister Keir Starmer from the UK, and then President Zelensky today. I mean, you could not have asked for a better arc. And he walked in, and I'm not sure what he was thinking.
Many of us have been in heated negotiations, not at this level, but still heated negotiations where people pound the table, they may walk out the door and things like that, and it's actually part of the negotiation. Is that what we saw today, or was this a more fundamental rupture?
David, you don't do a negotiation with the President of the United States in public like this. That we were scheduled to have lunch afterwards, and that perhaps he could have brought up some of the points. Instead, he chose to let things go into a downward spiral on worldwide television. And, again, I keep coming back to the disrespect of the American people. It was one thing for President Zelensky and I had an extended, heated negotiation in Kyiv, but we were going to get this economic agreement done. But when you bring it out to the public like this, we'll see if there's any coming back.
If there is further negotiation, do you expect to remain the point person on the economic deal?
I expect to be the point person on the economic deal, but ultimately it's going to be up to President Trump whether he thinks that he can continue negotiating with President Zelensky.
To Times Radio listeners, I said that J.D. Vance was a piece of shit. And I think that will be the impression of the rest of the world.
Well, we are covering the extraordinary scenes coming out of the White House this afternoon. Historic clash. It wasn't even a press conference because we have just been told that press conference that was planned between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky has been cancelled. Donald Trump has effectively shown Volodymyr Zelensky the door. So it became very, very heated in that exchange. We're going to just recap what has happened in the last hour in some of the most astonishing moments that I've ever witnessed between two world leaders. Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social that President Zelensky isn't ready for peace and can come back when he is. He's also accused him of disrespecting the US in the cherished Oval Office. Let's have a reminder of how the dramatic meeting unfolded over an hour ago. The exchange began to get heated when Volodymyr Zelensky interjected whilst the vice president was speaking.
I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014 and 2014.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped.
From there, it only got more uncomfortable.
And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
And this after President Zelensky warned of the war coming to the West.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very
You
strong.
will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
I'm not
cards.
playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What do you think
You're
about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III.
Well, let's continue discussing those unprecedented scenes coming from the White House now with Tim Marshall, foreign affairs expert and author of Prisoners of Geography, Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for Europe and NATO, and Alexander Mereshko, an MP in Volodymyr Zelensky's party and the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament. Good evening to all three of you. Alexander, let me start with you. When you were watching that encounter, what did you think?
Well, it was unusual, to put it very mildly. I couldn't believe my ears, but, you know, the Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy teaches us don't panic. So I hope that behind the closed doors, the situation will be more calm and more constructive.
Well, except Donald Trump has cancelled the press conference and effectively shown Volodymyr Zelensky the door.
Well, again, I'm proud of my president that he stands up he is able to defend our values and our country because, you know, right now he's the voice of a defiant country fighting against Russian aggression for the third year. And we're entering the fourth year of brutal war. But, you know, he's the voice of all Ukrainians. And I'm proud that he has guts to defend us, even in front of the most powerful person on earth, which is President Trump right now.
And I think we're just about to see him leaving the White House now. Yes, he has left the White House. He's got into a car. Volodymyr Zelensky has left without doing that promised press conference. That was really a very short encounter after that testy exchange that has, I think it's fair to say, shocked the world. Alexander, just before I bring in our other guests, is there an agenda here that Donald Trump and his team, they want to get Zelensky out and put someone more amenable in place? Is that what's at stake here?
No, absolutely not, because the recent statements made by President Trump with regard to our president had only this effect. They boosted the popularity of our president in Ukraine, because for us, he's a symbol of our resistance. And it had no effect because, you know, I don't see any reason to remove our president from power as a commander-in-chief, as a very popular president, as a symbol of our hope and resistance.
Jim Townsend, let me bring in you here, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for Europe and NATO. Jim, it was an extraordinary display. It looked like the two powerful men in the room hectoring and bullying the junior. What did you make of it?
Well, it was like a barroom brawl. I just, you know, it was brutal, quite brutal. It was shocking, but I think it was brutal in the sense that for all the public to see, we saw these two heads of state battling each other with fists, verbal fists, and we're not used to seeing that. One thing that Trump said was, I think the American people, the public should see this. And that's why I'm letting this photographic opportunity go on so that everyone can see this. And so in a lot of ways, this with theater, too. You know, he was raising his voice and he was J.D. Vance piling on this wrestling match, this scrum. Some of it was theater for the public to see how tough they are.
Well, is that the point, that it was a calculated, premeditated sort of ambush by the president and his deputy of the Ukrainian president?
Well, you know, it certainly felt like it, didn't it? I'm going to watch it again with that in mind. But they were ready. They were ready for this. J.D. Vance, particularly. I mean, usually the vice president sits there and doesn't jump in and pile on the way J.D. Vance did, and in a rude way, frankly. You know, Zelensky rose to the bait.
Should he not have done?
Excuse me?
Should he not have risen to the bait?
Yeah, I think everyone's different. I would not have risen to the bait because it just makes it worse.
But
It's
then
like
your
wrestling with a
country
pig.
isn't losing its people, every night in danger.
Well, I think there's a difference between rising to the bait and beginning a spectacle and defending yourself. And I think he was trying to defend himself, but with Donald Trump, I think you have to be it's like handling a bomb. You got to be very careful.
But
So
some
I
might
think-
say, why should you deal with him like that? Why should people do what Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron did? The bonhomie, the backslapping, and the kind of, they don't really think that, do they?
Well, it's an important point, and I think what I see here in Washington, talking to many Europeans coming through, they ask, how do we deal with Trump? And they all want to game the plan. You have a game plan for dealing with him, and I think Macron and Keir Starmer had their approach. I think Zelensky went in there, and I think, like you said, he's under pressure, so he did engage in a debate. But I think. With Donald Trump, it's like wrestling with pigs. The pigs love it, and you just get dirty.
That's such a metaphor. Let me bring in Tim Marshall now, foreign affairs expert, author of Prisoners of Geography. Tim, where on earth does this leave America, Ukraine, Europe, the UK, the world?
I think it leaves America's reputation significantly lowered. And I say that as a supporter of the United States. I say that as someone who believes that President Trump has got very many valid points when he criticizes the Europeans. I wrote a big essay in the Sunday Times this weekend saying just that, we have been backsliders, we have been weak, we haven't stood up for ourselves. But this was a premeditated, gangster-like ambush. It was low blows, it was clearly deliberate. The scene was set even before that, the bits you've played, Kathy. I think it was one of the tame journalists that they've got into the White House now who said to Zelensky, "Hey, why are you wearing that? Have you even got a suit?" They were goading him. And then in comes J.D. Vance, who knows better than to take control when the big man's in the room. So clearly he knows what he's doing. Absolutely insults the president of Ukraine. I believe he had to stand up for himself. I don't think Zelensky could have gone home being utterly humiliated. I don't think he was. I don't think he would survive as a political leader if he had not stood up for himself, because he is the representative of Ukraine.
But I
just thought it was disgusting.
Is that the agenda that the White House wants to get him out? And do you think that might work? I mean, how do you think things will shape up in terms of the EU, for example? Well, I mean, I've got a lot of people messaging in saying Keir Starmer now needs to cancel that state visit.
Well, he won't, because that's in Britain's national interest. But I go back to this idea of an ambush, and also what Jim just said. I wrote the words down when I heard Trump say them. I think it's very important for the American people to see what's going on. That's why I kept this going for so long. And then he ended the press conference, "This is going to be great television." It was absolutely deliberate, designed to humiliate Zelensky, because you could either humiliate him without him pushing back, in which case he's completely emasculated, and I think his term in office would come to an end fairly soon, or he stands up for himself, in which case they get to bully him even more. The Macron-Starmer loving, I think, will help France and Britain. Sorry, you asked me where it goes from here. I'm at a bit of a loss. I mean, and I thought it was interesting when you just announced that the press conferences have been cancelled, because it would have gone on again then. And look how short the meeting was. I mean, was it an hour? I think
round about.
I think Starmer had a couple of hours. They clearly have not agreed, and he's left, and they're going to get a deal imposed upon them, which is going to be very hard for them to accept. I think the chancelleries of Europe tonight will, like Oksana Marakova, who, if you see the footage, which you have, Kathy, you'll see a woman in the front row. She's got her head in her hands and she's almost crying. That's the Ukrainian ambassador to America. She realizes what's going on in front of her.
Well, Alexander Merezhko, MP in Volodymyr Zelensky's party, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. I've got to ask you, is Donald Trump a Russian asset?
I hope not. I hope not. But the truth is that we don't have any other American president. We have to deal with Mr. Trump as American president, and our fate dependent on the American military aid to Ukraine. We can survive due to American aid, and we're grateful for the fact that the United States has saved us several times. But, you know, for us, Trump is both challenge and opportunity. And we have no right to be pessimistic. We have to continue to deal with him, to persuade him, no matter how tough, how difficult it is, because he's our reality, objective reality. But luckily, we have friends. We have Keir Starmer, who will come tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, and will also speak on behalf of Ukraine. We have our President Macron. We have other European leaders who will gather together, 10 of them at the summit. So we have friends. We're not alone.
Very good to hear. Alexander Merezhko, thank you very much for joining us. I'll let you go. I'm sure you've got many other demands on your time now, but thank you very much for joining us on Times Radio.
But I said to you, I want a ceasefire with guarantees. Because you get a ceasefire faster than an agreement. Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think. But I said to you, I want a ceasefire with guarantees. Because you get a ceasefire faster.
I have been covering politics for nigh on 20 years. As you know, I've been fortunate enough to be at the centre of British politics, behind the scenes. I've been in head-to-head meetings between the Prime Minister of Britain and countries that we have disagreements with and countries that we are allies with. I've seen what happens when the media leaves the room. I have never in my life heard anything remotely close to what we have just witnessed. We have just witnessed history. We have just witnessed something that is closer to Jerry Springer over war on the European continent. I'm honestly speechless. There's a press conference going to happen later. Apparently, I don't know. I mean, who knows whether it's going to happen later? There's a press conference between Zelensky and Trump going to happen later. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if someone's going to emerge with a black eye. Zelensky looked like he was going to cry at points during that. 0345 6060 973. It's in these moments, folks. We turn it over to what you think. I mean, you've heard the same thing. We've all been going through the consequences of a war in Ukraine, us because of rising prices, whether it's energy or otherwise. We've all seen the effects of it. Trump has come in and in a month said he's going to do a deal to end the war. What do you think? What do you think? Simon Marks is LBC's Washington correspondent. Simon, what do you think? What do you think?
I think it was a mugging. I think it was a mugging, Tom, and I think it was entirely premeditated. I think that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance knew exactly what they were going to do the moment that they brought President Zelensky into the Oval Office. This is Donald Trump's thank you to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who yesterday went out of his way to flatter Donald Trump, invite him to make a state visit to the UK, secured the Prime Minister's approval of President Trump's efforts to try and end the war in Ukraine. And I suspect that they were fully aware yesterday, during that meeting with the Prime Minister, of what they were going to engage in today with the Ukrainian leader, the most courageous figure Europe has seen since 1945. They engaged in a premeditated geostrategic mugging of the Ukrainian president over that 45-minute brutal photo opportunity that Donald Trump deliberately put Zelensky through. And you heard him there at one point saying, this is why I let this thing run so long. And it's clear that this was premeditated. This is going to boost Zelensky's standing in Ukraine dramatically. The Russians, and let me just tell you parenthetically, the Russian news agency TASS a Putin propaganda outfit was allowed into the Oval Office, but not Reuters or the Associated Press. This is manna from heaven for Vladimir Putin, and it is a massive, massive political problem for Sir Keir Starmer, Lord Peter Mandelson, Number 10, and Emmanuel Macron, of course, who was here on Monday.
And most directly, Ukraine. I mean, there's Trump saying, make a deal or we're out, is a threat that Ukraine cannot do anything but acquiesce to. And so, in a sense, Simon, I'm actually, in a way, really pleased we all got to hear and see that. Because, I mean, there it is. It is authentically angry. That meeting, were it to have happened behind closed doors, obviously would never have been shown, but the readout would have, I think, reflected some of the anger there. But we have all now seen the American president and his sort of vice president kind of bully, almost, you know, the kind of the kid next to you in the playground who goes and starts the fight on your behalf.
Absolutely. But also playing to Trump's
try and take
base.
down Zelensky in a press conference.
Totally, but also playing to Trump's base and saying, Donald Trump, that he was really glad the American people were getting a chance to see this, and continuing to accuse President Zelensky, as J.D. Vance disgracefully did there, of not having thanked the United States for its assistance. Zelensky has constantly thanked the United States and the American people for the assistance they have provided him. But this is surely now the moment that the transatlantic alliance ends. I mean, all the talk yesterday, which was, you know, specious at best about the special relationship between the US and the UK, that is now absolutely consigned on the ash heap of bilateral cliches.
It's really an unprecedented day for the Ukrainian president. I don't think, you know, he's normally used to being received with applause and warm welcomes, especially from European allies. And then all of a sudden now he's just faced the biggest backlash from the United States president himself. Where do we stand? What kind of reactions are coming from Ukrainians themselves?
Well, before giving you the reactions from Ukrainians themselves, I'm going to give you this quite telling reaction from Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia, who shared on his social media, "The insolent pig finally got a proper slapdown in the Oval Office. And a real Donald Trump is right. The Kyiv regime is gambling with World War III. So what happened in the Oval Office serves exactly Moscow's propaganda and the Kremlin's agenda in Ukraine, as you've just heard from Medvedev, whom I was quoting. And it is with this in mind that people in Ukraine have reacted. The Ukrainians themselves, whom I talked to, were not surprised at the fact that the two leaders didn't see eye to eye, but that's a euphemism after what happened. I think no head of state has been disrespected the way Volodymyr Zelensky has been disrespected, not just by Donald Trump, but also by Vice President J.D. Vance. And we've had some reactions from the Ukrainian government with Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, who shared on his social media that President Volodymyr Zelensky is right. Peace without guarantees is not possible, and a ceasefire without guarantees is the way to Russian occupation to all European continent. Also, to give you another reaction from the government, the head of the presidential office, Andriy Yermak, shared quite early on after this huge altercation in the Oval Office. So how about you? How are you doing? In a very laconic, very telling way, which also tells you a lot about how Ukrainians would be left. Of course, they are shocked, but also they are not impressed, and they've been fighting not for 3 years, but for 11 years on this Russian aggression of their territory. And for them, it is a war of survival. They're not going to stop just because two people bully their president. There's also been reactions in the opposition of the government. It's important to highlight how all the opposition members of the parliament gathered and stand behind Volodymyr Zelensky at this very grave hour for Ukraine. Ever since Donald Trump started his accusations against Volodymyr Zelensky, and not just from tonight, from the moment he called Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator and put in doubt the democratic system system and process here in Ukraine. The opposition reaffirmed their support to Volodymyr Zelensky. I'm going to quote Ina Sovsun. She's an MP for the opposition group, parliamentary group Holos. She said, after the Oval Office meeting, the President of the United States claimed that Ukraine doesn't want peace. Nothing could be further from the truth. No one wants peace more than Ukrainians. But we're not being offered peace. We're being pushed into a ceasefire with no guarantees that Putin won't attack again. And that tells you, in essence, what Ukrainians are afraid of, that if there's any ceasefire that is decided on Moscow's condition, that means without respecting Ukrainians' sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, well, there's not going to be anything that Ukrainians can really believe is going to last, because we had ceasefire in the past. There were treaties in the past. I'm thinking also about the Minsk agreements, and Russia repeatedly violated those agreements, those treaties. And Ukrainians, as I was saying, are fighting for their own lives. Since the beginning of this year only, just about 8 weeks, we've had over our heads here in Ukraine over 5,000 drones. They've caused extensive damage, and they didn't cause more damage just because Ukraine is being supported by its allies and gets air defense. So Ukrainians are very worried about the future of this help, the future of this support. But with friends like Donald Trump or J.D. Vance, as we saw them tonight, who needs enemies here in Ukraine? I think Ukrainians tonight really realized that Washington had operated a very stark turn, a U-turn in its diplomacy, and that it's quite clear that Ukraine won't be able to count on the US much longer for support, or as things stand. And we've seen also a lot of reactions from EU leaders tonight. They stand alongside Ukraine and behind President Zelensky. Emmanuel Macron expressed his support, Foreign Minister of Germany, Annalena Baerbock, as well as the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, to quote only them.
And we've also now heard from the EU chief, Ursula von der Leyen, basically saying that the support, be strong, she says, be brave, be fearless, you are never alone. That's speaking to her dear President Volodymyr Zelensky. Emmanuel Chaz, thank you so much as well.
100 billion. We have, want to say, so thank you very much. So I just want to say we're going down to Florida. We have a big event tomorrow night, a big MAGA event, Make America Great Again. And it's setting records, and otherwise I'd rather be right now at the White House. But we're doing the big event tomorrow night. We had some big news this week, as you know, because Apple is investing $500 billion. Think of that. And that's going to be a lot. It's going to be a tremendous investment. I guess the biggest investment anybody's ever made in the country at one time. But they're going to be investing a lot of money, $500 billion. We have many other companies have just announced they're coming in. A lot of it's because of how we're doing. We've done a great turnaround in a little more than 30 days. But the country's really doing well, really doing well. We're respected again all over the world. If you look, we had the Japanese Prime Minister. We had the Prime Minister yesterday of UK, as you know. We had the Prime Minister of India. We have another 20 Prime Ministers and Presidents wanting to come. And it's very good feeling. I think our country has really turned around. We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week, soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians, and somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody. And we're not doing that. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that, not for this country. So we're setting a lot of records. Economically, we're setting records, and I think every way we're setting records. One of the best is the right track, wrong track. You saw that. We're on the right track for the first time in over 27 years. People are impressed with that. The other thing is the feeling about our country. The feeling is great. It's up 48% on feeling on business. And that's the record we've never had. There's never been a record where we've ever gone up that much in such a short period of time. So we're doing really well. And I guess some of you are coming with us. And if you are, I hope you're going to have a good flight. What? What does Zelensky need to do to restart talks with you? He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I can tell you.
Did you tell Zelensky to leave the White House?
I don't have to tell you that. Go ahead. I think you know the answer to that. What? Wait.
Do you trust
Look, I don't trust or distrust anybody. I just want to get a deal done. And if the deal happens, good. But you can't embolden somebody that does not have the cards, and all of a sudden that person says, oh, well, now I can keep fighting. We're not going to keep fighting. You're going to get the war done or let them go and see what happens. Let them fight it out. I want anybody that's going to make peace. If he's capable of making peace, which he may or may not be, but I want somebody that's going to make peace. Again, he doesn't have the cards. When we sign up, he's got all of the cards. That doesn't mean he can fight. He's got to stop the fighting, stop the death. He's losing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's time to stop the death. Say it?
How long do you think it will take for Zelensky to want peace and whether that's the White House?
Well, he says he wants it now. He wants to come back right now, but I can't do that. I can't.
Do you want immediate ceasefire, Mr. President?
They should have an immediate ceasefire. That was the other thing. He didn't want to do about ceasefire. A ceasefire could take place immediately. A contract, if you want to end the war, you sign up an agreement. That's going to take a period of time. It takes time. I want it to end immediately. And I think if you had a ceasefire, it would be a ceasefire, a real one, that would end it. But he doesn't want to do that. That's fine. Do a better deal. I want it to end immediately. I want a ceasefire now. He says, oh, I don't want a ceasefire. Well, all of a sudden, he's a big shot because he has the U.S. on his side. Either we're going to end it or let him fight it out. And if he fights it out, it's not going to be pretty. Because without us, he doesn't win, let me tell you. It doesn't matter what I'm considering. I'm just telling you. You saw what I saw today. That was not a man that wanted to make peace. And I'm only interested if he wants to end the bloodshed. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, President Trump there kind of rehashing what we all watched in the Oval Office between he and